Hello,
Hey everybody, welcome to the tutorial.
Podcast, whatever. I'm so bad.
Welcome to the tutorial. It's spooky month. Won't be by
What
the time
is
this
up,
goes up.
girls and gamers?
No. If you're here to learn something, you're in the wrong place, unless you wanted to learn that Ringo watches some really shady videos on YouTube.
What?
So we
I honestly don't know.
are talking about horror and survival horror genre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Horror games. Spooky games.
I did do just a modicum of research on this, which
I did, yeah. I also did a very...
I do mean
I did like
mean a modicum. I did not do much.
I did like a squeeze of an eyedropper, which was to go to Google and look up top horror games of all time, and that's where it stopped.
My research was watching like 4 or 5 hours of somebody play the first Silent Hill game.
Wow, you telling me out of all of us, Ringo did the most actual research? That's incredible.
Well, I was going to say I went a little deeper than what you did, because I looked up
top
what is
20
largely
horror games of all time.
what is largely considered the first survival horror game, and it was an ancient piece of like
I'm curious though.
6-bit ass called 3D Monster Maze, where you're running away from a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and that T-Rex's like physical design, because of the limitations of the system it was on, is gut wrenching. It's like some horrible like. Oh, you want to know what I could? You guys have like seen the Undertale memes, right? Like the melted monsters and shit. Like Undertale's really a horror game shit.
The goopy, yeah, I've seen them.
He looks like that. He looks like that.
Right, but they were
T-Rex
trying to build an actual T-Rex though, and not that mess.
Yeah, exactly. So like when he's coming at you, he's just like this huge. He's like a huge black pixelated thing with like his mouth is just this large, wide gaping Joker grin thing.
Okay, what was this called? What was this called?
3D Monster Maze. It's called 3D Monster Maze.
3D Monster Maze.
So Ringo just put a picture in our chat. So when he's a little further from you than that, his mouth looks even worse. He's horrifying. And then there's no sound. It runs off of, I think it's a 6-bit system. So there is no sound. And so you're running around the maze. You get points based on how many steps you can take before Rex kills you.
This looks like
a teleporter that takes you to the next maze.
This just
yep, there it is. That's just the fear-inducing.
That's not
frame right there.
That's not fear-inducing. That just looks like demo.
It does.
What?
So look, like to us in our era of Silent Hill and Resident Evil remakes and fucking FNAF and shit, this does not look that frightening, because I mean, look at it, it's ancient old ass graphics or whatever. That looks like someone was trying to make a dinosaur and failed, which is exactly what it is. But you gotta imagine this back in like 1982 when this game came out.
It just looks like demo.
Horrifying. A little.
You see what I mean?
I see where you're getting that, but also no, Demo does not have the Joker face going on.
Well, no, Demo doesn't have a mouth. That's the main thing.
Well, see, okay, but the main thing on the T-Rex is the mouth.
So yeah, so you get points for walking around, and every step you take, you get a point. Your goal is you're in an 18x16 maze that is procedurally generated, and each maze is procedurally generated in that your goal is to find a warp hole You get in the warp hole and you go to the next procedurally generated 16 by 18 maze. And instead of sounds, you'll just get this ominous text below you on the screen. But at like the bottom part of the screen, it'll say like Rex is lying in wait. Rex is hunting. Footsteps approaching. Run, he is behind you, or something like that.
Wow.
Run, he is beside you.
I think
And,
it says. I think
like-
it says. Run, he can see you.
Run, he can see you is another one, yes. And then there will be like Rex is approaching, and if it says Rex is approaching, that means he is in front of you. Turn the fuck around and run.
That's like,
Mm.
well, it reminds me of another horror genre game called Dino Crisis.
Yeah.
Which-
because I look at this and I'm like, this was in 1982. This is like 10 years before Resident Evil came out,
Mhm.
or at least almost. I don't know. I think Resi 1 either came out in 91 or 92, but I can't remember. But yeah, that was mostly the extent of my research. I did do a little bit more digging than that. I know that there was a horror game called Sweet Home, which, by the way, was actually the inspiration for one of your favorite comics, RGB.
Hold on, I'm looking this up.
I mean, it's nothing like the comic, I don't think, but some of the base concepts that made the game a good game were inspirational to creating the Sweet Home comic. You're looking it up. You're like, hold on, I didn't know.
I'm seeing a game called Home Sweet Home.
Wait,
Oh,
is
that might be it.
But
they
it's-
called it Sweet Home on YouTube.
Home Sweet Home is
no,
more
Home
recent,
Sweet
isn't
Home is way more recent. It's got 3D graphics, so that's definitely not it.
it?
No, this was like a top-down. It was very Gene Forge-y. I like Gene Forge in the old Fallout
So
games.
like
before-
isometric view.
Yeah, that type down isometric. That's the word.
Survival horror game. It's from Capcom,
Mm-hmm.
based on a Japanese horror film called Sweet Home.
Mm-hmm.
Has nothing to do at all with.
Well, I think the statement on YouTube was something like, the guy who wrote the comic played the game, and he likes certain aspects of it.
Well, the thing I can see right away is just that they're in a single location where a bunch of shit is happening. So they're in a mansion or something where all the supernatural shit happens, and in the comic they're in an apartment complex. But I can see the correlation there. But yes, there are many.
Yeah,
There are many horror game, many much.
I know we wanted to talk kind of about our experiences with the genre. It was one of the main things we wanted to push. And I think in that regard, I probably have the least amount of experience because most of mine is sort of like tertiary and orbiting around horror, and I don't really play horror games because I
think
don't like
my experience with horror is probably largely the same. The horror games that I've played are they're less like psychological thriller type horror and more just like lol zombies.
Horror themed action games.
Yeah, like Dead Rising.
Yeah.
Left 4 Dead, Dead Rising, Back 4 Blood.
Oh, Dead Rising is good.
But I have watched people play stuff like Ib or Mad Father or Franbo, stuff like that.
All these.
I forgot about Franbo. Holy shit.
Franbo, that's one hell of a game, bro.
Yeah. Oh my god, you just unlocked memories. Oh fuck. I actually forgot that that game existed entirely.
I have no idea what Franbo is.
You don't know what
It's
Franbo is?
Nope.
Franbo is a happy, fun game about a little girl who lives in an orphanage.
by herself.
I'm utterly convinced that's not the case.
Well, if this can give you any idea whatsoever, let me just
It's she's
let me drop
drawn
this.
like
Let me
kinda
drop this in the chat
burdened.
real quick. And
Okay, I
it
just got a
didn't go.
link. Interesting.
It
Yeah,
didn't
no,
go through as a.
Okay, yeah, I did.
you see?
You
Do you
know,
see?
click on the link. No thanks.
It's a good game though. It's a good.
It
game.
is. It is. It's actually got a very. It's got a very good story. And gameplay wise, it's
Wait,
also very good.
That reminds me of Little Inferno. I don't know if that one counts.
No, it's not even close to horror genre. Little Inferno is just a puzzle solving game.
Okay.
Cause like, see, I didn't really get into, and you guys are all gonna collectively groan now. I didn't really get back into horror genre stuff until
Five Nights at
Five Nights at
Freddy's.
Freddy's. Yeah,
Jesus.
that's the reality of it.
Uh,
I hated it. Like I watched it because Markiplier did
Dude.
a let's play of it, and I was like,
Dude,
oh, this might be interesting. And then I could not sleep that night, and I was like, all right, yeah. So I reminded myself why I don't do horror because it doesn't
Dude.
bother me until I go to sleep, and then I have night terrors.
I was on Five Nights at Freddy's when I was in like 7th and 8th grade, and then
I
was
know.
like,
So for you,
and then I was like, oh, this is
you look back at it and go, ugh, cringe. Ugh. But for me, I was an adult then, and I'm an adult now, and I have a much more objective lens in my opinion.
Well, okay. I should put it this way. I don't know what the fuck, how many games there are, but when I was playing it in 7th grade, there was 1, 2, and 3, and that was it. So
Here it comes.
There's thoroughly too many games, and I'm pretty sure that Scott Cawthon did not actually intend to write this enormous convoluted story initially.
It's such a shit.
It just ended up there because he had a rabid internet fandom that was like, more.
Here they go. It was better back in the old days.
I'm not saying that even. I'm just saying like it's a great example of like how someone can make something and they're just like, hey, I'm just gonna make this cool little horror game and whatever. And then the internet demands more.
What I was gonna say was like I remember playing it and all, and I was like, okay, well, this is fun, but it's like, it's whatever. It's not that great. It's an okay game. And then the entire internet disagreed with me.
Yeah. And here's what's funny about that, right? Because Five Nights at Freddy's is definitely powered by the internet. And you can tell because other internet favorites such as Bendy and the Ink Machine and Baldi's Basics, I can't remember the last time anyone talked about those other than Dave.
Bendy and the Ink Machine, that's been some years. Baldi Basics has been even longer, I think.
Well, because like I'm thinking about, and the reason we talked about this a little bit before. The reason I did think it was important to bring up FNAF, I didn't want to stay on it too long, but it did in fact start a whole slew of popular internet horror games with similar mechanics, such as things like Little Nightmares and what's it called? Tattletale was another one.
And my whole point is all of that shit because FNAF has consistently made new games and just new stuff, new books, new whatever. All of that shit has been buried by FNAF because they've made so much stuff, which has made the entire concept rather tired.
Yeah, I agree with that. But it was very important in informing the general consensus.
Oh yes, I would say in the 2000s,
what makes a good horror game.
In the 2000s generation, it's definitely been a cornerstone of the survival horror genre. Yes,
because I would argue that it's probably in large part because of FNAF, that people started feeling more nostalgic to Resident Evil and gave Capcom the power to just completely recreate old games in new engines. That combined with the fact that Final Fantasy did it
Now,
once and it fucking worked,
I think
and now you
think
have this massive like fan following of the new old Resi games.
I think people would have loved them regardless of whether
yeah,
or
I was
not.
gonna say I think that it would have been
Yeah,
received well anyway
I
I
will
think it
because
would.
they
say,
were good games to
I think
start
the
with.
explosiveness of that good reception was partly because people are fucking sick of FNAF.
yeah, and I think, like I said, I think Capcom, it would have been a success anyway. But I think Capcom picked absolutely the right time to release that for it to hit such a like an up spike.
Yeah,
But speaking of
like
Resident
we
Evil,
were.
you want to talk about
Go ahead.
capstones of the survival horror genre, or cornerstones
That
of the survival horror
I
genre?
was trying really
Capstone.
hard to bring the conversation to that. I don't know if you noticed.
Resident fucking Evil. Holy shit. Because we were just talking about how FNAF has like books and movies and shit. Well, Resident Evil did that way before.
Way before. You know, the sad thing is like Resident Evil movies have a little to know the games.
Yeah, they have, other than that Wesker is there, they really don't have anything to do
Well,
with the games.
Chris Redfield is there, and Chris's sister is there, but Chris's sister is there in only
Claire.
2 of the movies. The first movie is like 100% a vacuum. There's not a single character from the Resident Evil game.
And you're talking about, to be specific, you're talking about the live action ones with Alice.
Yes, we're talking about the live action ones with Mia Yakovich or whatever her name was.
Mhm. And yeah, and those ones
What's her
have.
name? She also played one of the pilots, the pilot that helped the blue alien people in Avatar, but I can't remember her name. She's like the
I don't know because
she always plays a character who's like the I got raised with all the boys, so I'm basically a boy, and give me gun and more DACA character.
see,
Like,
I don't
I don't know
know
her name.
with
know
Avatar
her
though.
name.
I don't know because I've only seen like the last quarter of that film.
You would have
I-
seen her then.
I haven't seen.
She was fighting against the general who was trying to kill the giant tree.
Mm.
I haven't seen
She
much
was a
of that
human.
movie in all honesty.
She was a human in like a helicopter, like an attack chopper.
But we're getting away from the point.
Yes. The point is that the movies didn't have a lot to do with the games. The games were revolutionary for a number of things that I don't know because I didn't play them. I know you had limited inventory. I know you could do you could craft you could use herbs to heal yourself, and then you could also use herbs to like craft stronger healing items.
Yeah, and I know they self roasted themselves with the healing herb thing in the newer games, right?
Yeah.
Because they did some shit where it's like, oh, you can get your hand nearly chopped off and then you pour some like
Oh, yeah.
herb tincture on it and it's suddenly all better.
That Markiplier clip where he's like, just gotta put some goop juice.
Yep.
Something that was a mark of Resident Evil games when they were starting out was intentionally stunted controls. That
Mhm.
was something because they made it so you felt like you were piloting a tank basically, like
Yeah.
but because it's a lot of the game has like long corridors and shit, and then on top of that having slow chunky controls, it adds to a feeling of like you don't feel like you're moving around fast and jumping around and you can take on God. You feel
I
like
think
you're
a
trapped
part
in
of
here with
that
them type of deal.
I think a part of that is the fact that they give you specific camera angles that you can't change.
Yeah.
Because
That's
that feeds
another one.
into like the feeling you get when you're having a nightmare, and no matter how hard you try to run, you can't run
Yeah.
fast enough, and you
Yeah.
can't see what you want to see, and you can't do what you want to do. Like, you know it's all there. You know there's no good reason you shouldn't be able to do all these things, but you can't. Like, something keeps you from doing it.
Yes.
So you give that same sort of like nightmare anxiety when you mess with the controls like that.
Mhm. And then they also just did some really creative stuff with just like the enemies and stuff. Like you had your typical like, oh no, spooky zombies, but like leave it to fucking Resident Evil for you to go like, huh, there's a fish tank here. I wonder what's in there. And then a giant fucking zombie shark tries to eat you.
You must wake up before you forget how to.
What does that have to do with
I don't
zombie
know
sharks?
if any. I don't know if there's anyone watching this podcast that will get that joke. I don't think my co-host got that joke.
Wake up,
Zombie shark.
Mr. Freeman.
No, that's
Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman.
what you say, Ringo.
I said zombie shark.
Zombie
Which
shark.
Resident Evil is that?
Mr.
Um,
Freeman, that's we're talking about. Fuck it, what was
Okay,
that,
it says
Half-Life?
zombie shark from
Half-Life.
Resident Evil 6. Yeah, no. I'm talking about the zombie shark.
Yeah, there's
This says
also
it's from Resident Evil
Is he
6.
trying to get? Okay, so here's the question: do you want me to explain my joke or no? It's
I
an
mean, if
internet
you want
post.
to.
It's an internet post. There's a post on the internet where they said they had a dream that they were standing there and this big giant woman was standing like skyscraper size above them, and somehow they knew that this was God, and the woman said like, you know I love you, right? And the dreamer says yes, and then she says, then why do you hate yourself? Why do you hate my creation? And she starts crying, and she like when she cries it's enough to like be a flood and swipe him away. And someone said, oh, that reminds me of this other post where this dude was he said he had a nightmare where he was just sitting in like a really eerie room that wasn't quite right. He didn't know what was not quite right about it, just that it wasn't quite right. And the only illumination in the room was a light in a little fish tank. And in the fish tank was a slightly above average sized goldfish with a full mouth of human teeth who turned and looked at him and then just said,
You've been here a while. You might want to wake up before you forget how to.
Full mouth of human.
So, so there you go for Spooky Month. I figured that would be appropriate. It's scary to think about that, like your soul could go somewhere
Well,
in your dreams.
well, but then that begs the question: is like, does that actually happen, or is it a scenario entirely constructed by your brain?
Which is a really big philosophical debate we'll leave for another episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
We'll move on
just real quick,
to-
the last thing I wanted to say about Resident Evil, because it was great. Actually, two things. One, they did a thing in Resident Evil 7 or 8. I think it was. No, it was in
Eight's the
Village.
most recent one.
Yeah, it was in Village
that's
where
not
where
Village,
they
it's 8.
they give you a. I don't want to spoil too much of it, but just that they give you a reason why you can almost get your hand chopped off and have it grow back by pouring goop on it.
Yeah.
They were
yeah.
just like, really? Did you really think that was actually normal?
Yeah.
Did you?
But it's like a stupid reason.
It is a stupid reason. But the other thing too is I wanted to say there is an animated film, a Resident Evil film, which I don't quite recall the name of, but it's the only film that has both Chris and Leon in it, and boy, do they hate each other.
Interesting.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, to be fair, I don't think their organizations would get along very well either. Leon kind of works for.
Leon works for Raccoon Police Department.
Yeah, Leon's a police officer.
And Chris
Yeah.
I remember he had something to do with like Save the President's Daughter or some shit.
Well, yeah, but that's because she's in Raccoon City, and he's happens to be,
I mean,
the only living.
This is the
annoying little
worst
shit who
first
thinks
day
he's
ever.
God through the fucking
Yeah,
No,
Leon.
it's like on an island. It's on an island.
Leon.
In the middle of the ocean.
Leon.
Yeah, you're chasing this.
Leon. Sherry, shut the hell up.
Because it wasn't horror. Like, I know it insists that it's horror, but it wasn't horror. At no point did I feel scared. I was like, these are just assholes who are running a fucking cult, and this stupid little shit who thinks he's God running around. Like, whatever, I'm gonna put a bullet in your head. I'm transforming to a giant ugly flesh flower. I'll put 20 bullets in your head. Fuck off. Like, I never felt like that was a horror game playing.
Yeah.
The only Resident Evil that I've actually played myself is the 6th one, and I have only played Chris's story.
I've never played any of them.
Because you can
I
play
played a little bit of the new Resi 2.
You can play Chris's story, you could play Leon, you could play Sherry and Jake, which is Wesker's son, and you can play this other girl, I forget her name, Ada Wong, that's her name.
My only experience with Wesker is in Marvel vs. Capcom, where he runs around and goes, "Over here,
Over here.
humans are
Over
so
here."
predictable."
Resi 4, by the way, is now in VR, so that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing that the other
Yeah, I
day and
remember.
going, "Yeah, fuck that."
I may
Yeah,
actually,
I saw an ad
I
for
may
it
actually
yesterday
play
at the
that.
airport. I saw an
Wasn't
ad
Resi
for it
4 the
on
one
YouTube
with the
a couple
stupid
days ago.
kid you chase around?
I don't
The
know.
one, I want to say Resi 4 was the
Leon!
one I played. Yeah, that and save the fucking president's daughter and oh my god, this useless bitch who cannot do anything to defend herself.
That's the
at all.
president's daughter.
Yes, I know. Like, take 5 minutes and tell her how to throw a punch, dipshit. It would help. Jesus.
Yeah. So,
See, shit like that is why it doesn't feel like a horror game. It just feels like a very, 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 very long.
yeah, where it's like
protection mission.
It's like with other Resident Evils, you can imagine, even if you turned for whatever reason, even if you turned it off, you could imagine like the ambient creepy music. But with that one in particular, all you hear is doot 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 doot.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So
and you hear Leon.
Yeah, Leon. Yeah. So let us transition then away from the horrifying world of Resident Evil and into the other massive cornerstone of survival horror games, that is Silent Hill.
Oh man, Silent
Matthew,
Hill.
Silent Hill, I actually have played absolutely none of ever. I
Me
am
too.
only aware that Pyramid Head is apparently the embodiment of the main character's sexual frustration or something.
It's weird because first of all, Pyramid Head isn't even in the first game, is he?
I don't know.
No, he's in the second game.
He's in the second game.
Which is when the entire fucking game is just like
here's the
a
thing.
mental projection of his fucked up brain.
Well, the first one is kind of like that as well, because Silent Hill's whole thing is like it's a representation of it's a representation of your mental state, basically. And all in the first game there was all these those little enemies with the knives that fucking like tackle you, grab onto your legs.
No idea what you're talking
and
about,
they were called doll zombies.
That sounds horrifying.
Yeah,
doll zombies.
Doll zombies.
That sounds awful.
They're not that bad though. They're just it's because of the shitty fucking PS1 graphics. They're not that scary. But I do know that a lot of the what's it called? A lot of the earlier like Silent Hill, like the first game and second. I think I don't know how many games there are actually of Silent Hill, but I know the
There's
first
two,
game.
and then there's a whole bunch of stuff that they added on to two, and a bunch of two remakes and shit.
I don't
I don't
think
think there's actually a Silent Hill 3.
Silent Hill games. Oh, PT is a Silent Hill game. I forgot about that.
PT. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is. Although we never get to find out the
I
extent of that because it just
yeah.
Oh, there is a Silent Hill 3. It's Silent Hill 3 Orphan, and I think it's a mobile game.
Okay, so it doesn't count.
And then
But then there's also this one, Silent Hill 3, and you play as Cheryl, the guy in the first game's daughter.
Okay.
yeah, and then there's Silent Hill 4.
Right, okay, but in Silent Hill 1 and 2 especially, because they were on not so great PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 graphics, they really weren't that scary. In Silent Hill 1 there was this constant fog when you were outside. And part of the reason why they did that is because the game's fucking half loaded all the time. Like
I
the
remember reading about that somewhere.
the reason you can't see out past there is because it's just not loaded. It just isn't there, pretty much. But something I really, really did like about Silent Hill is the little fucking radio that starts giving off white noise when you're near an enemy. Because most of the time, there's no music. In some places there's music, but most of the time you're just walking around through the school and there's no music, and then there's just this eerie white noise when an enemy is near. But I didn't see enough of the game to see what any of the bosses or anything like that were like. But I do know that when they came out with the second game and what's it called, and it had Pyramid Head in it, everybody loved Pyramid Head, and then they kept bringing back Pyramid Head when it didn't make any sense to bring back Pyramid Head because he was a representation of one of the character from Silent Hill 2, James Sunderland. It was a representation of one of. It's basically James Sunderland's demon, like personal hell demon, and they kept bringing him back essentially for fan service, for lack of a better term, because people love Pyramid Head, and it's like.
Well, to be fair, he worked really well for what he was supposed to do, which I think got a lot of people liking him as a horror monster. Because when you find out what he is, you're like, oh my god, that is literally the dark mirror of everything my character is.
Yeah.
There was
and that was just a really powerful moment in the game.
Yeah. There's also somewhere in the game there's actually multiple Pyramid Heads, because one of them, there's one with like a spear, which is really, it looks really weird when you're so used to seeing the one with the big sword. But what's it called? There's like a photo that you can find of these guys that are dressed up in all white, like how Pyramid Head is, and they have these leather sacks over their heads. And I don't remember exactly what they're supposed to be, but I'm pretty sure Pyramid Head is supposed to be like a twisted image of that like person, but also as a representation of whatever the fuck for
James Sunderland's issues. I do remember that a big chunk of that, which was really, really controversial at the time, was the fact that he was running around fucking all the nurses, basically. And that a chunk of Pyramid Head's characterization was like the sexual frustration and stuff. And to be fair, culturally, we were in a very different place at that time. And stuff like that. So it hit different back then than it does today. Nowadays, a lot of the stuff that made him horrifying is kind of a joke now.
Yeah, I will say, I saw a little bit of the Silent Hill movie, which is a thing.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And it's a part where Pyramid Head shows up, and he the only bit of the movie I've seen, mind you, he shows up and he picks a girl up and he rips off her clothes, and then he grabs her skin and rips off her skin.
Uh-huh.
Sounds
Just
fun.
Yeah,
like-
that
like-
would give a little Timmy
yeah.
nightmares.
Mm-hmm. That's just like, oh, okay, that just happened.
Yo, hot. Yo, not also hot. Oh my god, no.
Yeah.
In the words of Lancer, you make my feelings do wheelies.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Silent Hill was also very, very like formative of the survival horror genre as it shot up through the 90s.
There's a lot of games that like spun off from those two like main contenders, which are Resident Evil
Mhm.
and Silent Hill. I didn't necessarily go anywhere because they didn't do as good a job of it.
Yeah, well, there's
I was
there's
trying to get
stuff
into-
there's stuff like, for example, Left 4 Dead. You can see where it drew from, like Resident Evil.
Yeah, a
But
little
it also drew more from like the Evil Dead comics and movies, right?
bit. Mhm. Well,
So it's like a
Evil-
mix of those
something I think
things.
a big
Evil Dead
difference
is great.
between Resident Evil
This is
and
my
Left 4 Dead
bone
and
stick.
the way that they kind of like portray their zombies is like in Resident Evil, it's either a normal zombie or some horrible eldritch Cthulhu monster
Mm-hmm.
that is mutated from some dude who got the zombie virus but wasn't normal, or he got a different version of the zombie virus that fucked them up thoroughly too much. And
He got the T-Virus RTX edition.
yeah.
See,
They turn into like a giant fucking caterpillar or a giant millipede or a giant flower or whatever.
Or just like a
Something
really
something I do
recall.
recall from Resident Evil 6 is they didn't ever once refer to it as the T virus, because in that game it was like they were calling it the C virus, and that was the one that was mutating
there's
people
different
like that.
there's a whole. I mean, I could
There's the T
go on a
virus,
little bit of a
the T virus.
tirade of the
there's a
the
whole
Resident
bunch of
Evil
shit.
lore.
But it's weird because in Resident Evil 6, I remember there was some enemies that you had to fight that in Chris's part of the story at least, that were like weird grasshopper men.
Yeah, so there's the T virus and all of its variants, and then there's like
There's
a
the
literal
virus, which
Mhm.
it isn't the T virus, even though it starts with T, and you would think that that's the case.
Yeah, but no. it's
right,
not.
and then there's a literal plant also that turns people into zombies.
Right.
And then there's like in Resident Evil 7, there's a mold fungus thing that's alive. There's like a lot. There's a lot. There's a lot of ways to become a zombie in the Resident Evil world.
You know what I don't understand is Mr. fucking like Magneto in Resident Evil 8. I don't understand how he has his power.
I feel like
to bring this back to what I was gonna say though,
they're just slowly
in
turning up
Resident
the
Evil-
bullshit meter.
in Resident Evil, they make
slowly.
it a point that you have normal zombies and you have variant zombies, and variant zombies are always really super dangerous, really fucking hard to kill, and they are almost always boss level monsters.
Mhm.
In Left 4 Dead, you don't really get that. You get regular zombies and variant zombies. Variant zombies are tougher than regular zombies. They have abilities that regular zombies don't have, but they're not boss level. They're usually just as easy to take out as a regular zombie. They just do different things, and they affect, like, for example, you have the boomer kind of gives you an area effect zone. Like, you don't want to be close to the boomer, and he controls like an area that's considerably larger than himself. just by being there, because you don't want to be puked on him and you don't want to explode him when he's too close to the player. Likewise, the spitter in Left 4 Dead 2 also has some level of area control because of the ability to deny you a section of like a zone that you don't want to be in because you'll be constantly taking damage.
Yeah, but
You
then
do have
also
boss
you
zombies,
have
but they're not. They're.
you also have the fucking tank, which is the
Yeah, I was
closest
gonna
you'll
say
get
you
to
have.
a boss in that
Oh,
game.
I would argue the witch also counts as a boss zombie, but they don't. They don't. The witch is kind of more of a mini boss zombie.
Which is
while the
easier to
tank is like
kill
a
than the tank.
boss zombie.
Yeah.
But it's a. What was I gonna say? It's not like a unique boss zombie. It is a. It's
No, it's not like
it's
it's not like you run into
it's
a fucking
standardized.
zombie shark,
That's the word
right?
I'm looking for. It's a
Yeah.
standardized thing. You don't get anything that's outside of the standard stuff. Like, there's definitely no variant zombie that only shows up one time as a boss.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Wesker. Oh wait, no, he shows up like 18 times. Never mind.
Yeah, Wesker's just
but,
everywhere all the time.
Spoiler alert,
Always
he's dead now.
always fucking with your shit. Is he
he'll come
really?
back.
Is
He'll
he
come
really
back.
dead?
I don't know. I mean, he has a son he has a son who's like unreasonably upset about his death, so probably.
Okay, so
Yeah, and
I
also
don't see how anyone could be unreasonably upset about that man's death. Fuck
also
him. Let him
well,
die,
somebody did, and that's why he has a son. Also, he the other thing there is that Chris Redfield is just also always there too.
Yeah, for some, I think Chris is immortal or some shit.
There was a little bit of controversy because at the end of Resident Evil 7, when the boss mold shows up, and your character is just like a normal dude who was just there to try and find his wife. He's like, oh fuck, what do I do about this giant fucking thing? And here comes fucking Chris Redfield flying in a helicopter, going, oh hey, a civilian, here, take this rocket launcher and kill that thing. And
save the day.
Yeah, and then he's just like,
Deus Ex Machina, like Chris Redfield.
Yeah, so you blow it up, and then he like picks you up off the ground, and he's like, "I'm Redfield," and everyone's like, "That's not really Chris Redfield. He looks way different." And the thing about that was, right, it was just a graphics update. It's just the game had better graphics than previous games, so everyone was freaking out, going, "That's not Chris Redfield," but it was though. But there was these insane theories about how it's actually this person who's a clone. And it's like, it's not, though. It's just Chris Redfield with updated graphics.
It's Chris Redfield with RTX turned on.
Yeah.
Just because it's been 30 years since the first Resident Evil in our world does not mean it's been 30 years in the Resident Evil world.
No.
It's something a lot of people also don't understand is like, to give an example that's way, way more recent, Deltarune recently came out with Chapter 2, which when you play the game, it's literally just the next day, but it's been 3 years since Chapter 1 was released.
Has it fucking been 3 years?
It has been 3 years since Chapter 1 was released. Chapter 2 just released, but if you play the game, the events of the game, you literally went to bed and got up the next morning. That's all the time that's passed in that world. So people also kind of they don't necessarily understand that, like,
and then they start making
development in our world, in the fictional world they've created, could be like 2 weeks.
They start making like fan theories and stuff about how, like, oh, time works weird in this universe, and it's like, it's not it's literally just the next day. Like, get over yourself.
Like, time does not work. Yeah, exactly. I could go on with how.
But we're talking about horror games, so let's talk about Fatal Frame for a second. That's a nice game.
So you go ramble on, because I know nothing about this. I just know.
So Fatal Frame is the survival horror genre game that started the whole trope of you look at the horrible things through a camera. And the whole point of Fatal Frame was you play as these I believe they're high school girls that are trapped in various locations. I think one of them they're trapped in a church, one of them trapped in a mansion, stuff like that. And you're basically running around. It's similar to Resident Evil, where and you have to go like solve puzzles and deal with monsters in order to escape. But it's one of those like you can't directly see them. You have to look at them through the camera, right? So Fatal Frame is a whole lot of going places and taking pictures on your cell phone to discover the horrible paranormal things going on.
Wasn't there something like that in the show Supernatural where there's like, oh yeah, you can see up through a camera?
There probably was, because Supernatural took literally every trope from every horror thing ever
Yeah.
and put it in their show until the point where they were like, we have no ideas left, so let's just kill God.
Yeah.
I mean,
I thought that was
you're not wrong.
That's a whole that we could do an entire episode on Supernatural in and of itself.
We should really do that.
We
when,
should.
Zeta's around.
Yeah, we should.
He's the fanboy.
I dropped off that wagon at some point. I was like, this is getting too long-winded. And it's gotten too ridiculous.
My Supernatural was I'd show up at Zeta's place and he'd be watching it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd watch like 2 episodes with him and then I'd be gone and then I wouldn't have exposure to it for like another month and a half. And then by the time that's come by and I come back in and I see another 2 episodes, I'm like, okay, what the fuck has happened? The world has completely altered since the last time I was
right.
here.
I remember
So
I remember I watched a lot of it.
Man.
I watched a lot of it, and then it got to the point where it's like, this is Metatron, and I'm like, this isn't real anymore, and I just like left it. I put it down.
It's like, what is going on?
Metatron is actually a really, really, really old name of an angel in like Catholic lore.
I know it is, and it's the stupidest fucking thing.
Here's the thing: the first time I ever heard that name, like I looked at the dude like he was completely fucking crazy because I'm like, yeah, okay, Megatron's an angel now, like.
Yeah, it sounds exactly like a '90s ass Transformers name. It really does.
Yeah.
You got Megatron
100%.
and his little brother Metatron.
Yeah, Minitron.
Yeah. And I just couldn't take it seriously at that point because he was like, I'm Metatron! And it's just like, all right, I'm done. let me go home now, please. You know?
I wanted to talk about, because I think these 3 kind of showed up at around the same time, which was Outlast, the Evil Within, and I'm trying to think. There was a third one I had my mind on that was similar to those. But we could at least start with those.
Is it Layers of Fear?
No.
No?
No.
Layers of Fear is a good one.
Because I think Outlast and The Evil Within kind of came out around the same time as a lot of those like FNAF inspired indie horror things were really popular, and I remember thinking that these were going because I remember thinking like because of the time they came out and who was covering them on YouTube that these were kind of going to get looped into the same thing. But then when I watch a playthrough, I'm like, this is nothing like the indie stuff that we've been looking at recently. Oh, I was the RPG Maker horror games. That was another thing that got.
Oh yeah, see that's what I was talking about earlier with like Ib and Mad Father. That you wouldn't think with the little with like the RPG Maker graphics that they have, you wouldn't think they'd be that good. But damn, are they fucking fantastic!
I just had a crazy realization.
What?
Dead Space.
Yeah, Dead Space.
We will definitely need to talk about that. Yeah.
Sci-fi horror.
Dead Space is weird because it is sci-fi horror, and that sci-fi element. Because you could argue Resident Evil is sci-fi horror, but it's still human, if that makes sense. Like it's still definitely like down to earth, or it feels more down to earth. In Dead Space, the horror is a cosmic entity. Like.
Mm-hmm.
The cosmos are here to fuck you over. We put this thing here on purpose to destroy you. You know, to create you and then to make it so that we could come in and just eat you, basically. I mean, at the end of the day, spoiler alert, that's what it is, the big giant mushroom moons. But like, yeah,
Big
it's
giant mushroom.
it feels like, I'm just being honest, they look like, that's what they look like, big giant mushroom moons. But like, it doesn't feel as down to earth. It definitely feels like we reached out into space and we were not ready for what we found there, which is a very similar sort of
Yeah.
vein that the newer reincarnations of Doom go for.
But playing the first Dead Space, because I haven't played Dead Space 2, I've only played the first one. It felt again like it had those intentionally stunted controls where
It
you
did.
walk around all chunky and slow, and it definitely adds to the feeling of not being able to get away from whatever the fuck is out there.
I also love the meme of how his health is like you can tell where his health is because he's got like a spinal cord light up thing. And the thought of like a doctor or an engineer being like, yeah, and you could tell where your health is at with this thing on your spine. And it's like, how would I be able to see that? Oh, but if somebody was looking over your shoulder.
And let's not forget the part about better stick this needle in your eye correctly or you'll fucking die.
Oh my god, I hated that. That was so annoying.
I feel like the first time, right, there's like this tense feeling where it's like, oh my fuck, this is horrible. I have to stick a needle in my eye. This is like weird and gross and horrible. And then after you like die 6 times because you don't do it right, it's like, god damn it. Come on.
Yeah. No, I think that's the funny thing too.
Fucking
right?
needle in it.
So,
Fuck.
you stick the needle in your eye, god damn it.
Yeah.
Like,
Just shove it
like,
in there.
it really kills the horror vibe with that. I think that's
Yeah.
funny because then later in what's that game with the mimics that I'm trying to remember the name of?
Prey?
Yeah, Prey. It, like, they don't tell you that he's gonna just fucking stick shit in his eye to upgrade stuff. He just grabs the thing and goes with no warning. And you're like, ah, God, Jesus.
Yeah. The other thing that I recall specifically about Dead Space that it did well, which I believe was in the second game, was they have you up until this point. You've been like, oh, that's a thing, I'm gonna kill it. Oh, that's an enemy, I'm gonna kill it. And then you walking through this like creepy med bay type place, and one of this giant fucking monster, pops around the corner, and you're like, oh god, and you shoot it and it dies, and you're like, okay, it's dead, and you move on, and then it gets back up and it follows you, and you're like, what? I wasn't expecting that.
Excuse me, no, you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, it's like, that's against the rules. And then the game goes, hey, by the way, you have enemies that get back up now.
Yeah. So I thought I would do you the courtesy of letting you know. Well, I guess not ahead of time, but hey, these guys are tough.
Yeah.
Just hey, buddy, hey, pal, Isaac.
Yeah.
So
But there's definitely like I think there's also sort of like one thing I think Dead Space does well too is it plays to the science fiction setting of itself.
oh yeah.
So like you know like when you're walking around in like a dark, dank, creepy house in a horror game, like you get a certain feeling out of it. You get a very different feeling when you're walking around in an empty, power deprived space station.
It's
Yeah.
even more isolating because it's even more
Yeah,
unfamiliar.
because you're like, I'm in some space station. Like Alien Isolation did this really well too, because the other thing is like you go into places, you're like, this is clearly like a living space. People are supposed to be here. Like this is a space station. This is supposed to have like bustling activity and all this, and it is just
It's
fucking
mhm.
empty. And the only thing here is monsters, and I have no idea where they are.
Yeah. And just to like put a drop of real life in there for a second, can you imagine sans the monsters? Can you imagine what, like, that feeling that you have walking around the empty ass space station. Like, can you imagine being a sailor in the olden days and coming upon the Mary Celeste, and that's just what you get? Is like you walk on board this ship and it's just fucking empty. There's nobody there.
It's gotta be scary too, because then
Oh, yeah.
not only was there nobody there, and this should have been a bustling zone. You see the evidence that like people were here,
And they fucking
and
ran.
it's like they're just not here anymore. Like there's still warm fucking food on the table. Like
Mm-hmm.
what the fuck happened?
Right,
here?
and there's no, within however many miles radius, there's zero evidence of people. Like, they're just not present. And that has to be, that I imagine being, 1800s, 1700s, whenever that was. That had to have been
good.
absolutely
The
horrifying.
1872.
Raptor and
Yeah.
So
I
there
am
was
still here.
discovered on December 4th, 1872.
And especially when during that time there was still a lot of kick about witchcraft. Like, that had to be really
Mm-hmm.
I imagine whoever found that boat was probably made into like a local celebrity.
Not only that, but they probably lived in fear for the rest of their life or whatever the fuck.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
Here's the thing: I'd be willing to wager that if I was a boat captain back then and I found that, I'd be like, "We are going to the nearest port, and I am never going on the ocean again." I don't know what the fuck did that, but I don't want it happening to me.
Now, do you want to hear something interesting? So, I don't know if you've heard of this game, but and it skirts the line a little bit on whether or not it's horror, really. But Return of the Obra Dinn.
I don't know what that is.
I've never heard of that.
So, it's a game where you are sort of a bit of a detective, but like you're employed by the the dock master, basically, to figure out what happened on this ship and to basically see if there's anything of value or what the story of the ship is and blah blah blah. The reason I say it skirts the genre a little bit is because it's technically a puzzle game. However, the way that you're going about discovering the fate of the ship, which was much like the Mary Celeste, was found floating in the ocean somewhere and brought to a dock to figure out what happened. You literally have a little item, which I believe is called the Memento Mori. It's like a little pocket watch that you carry around with you that literally lets you like walk into an area and you push the little button on top and it essentially puts you in the time of what happened. Like, it puts you on the scene of like it's so you can walk up, you can find the bodies on the ship, right? And you can walk up to the body and push the button and it'll be like, okay, now you're seeing in real time what happened to this person, like how did they die. And
is this like a so hold on, so is this like Memento Mori watch thing? Is this supposed to be like we're living in a high-tech society and this is a technological thing that I'm using to figure out what happened? Or is it supposed to be that this
I think it's
had a relic capable of doing?
Yes, that's
I think it's for a gimmicky game mechanic.
Well, I mean,
it
yes,
is.
Obviously, but how is it played within the story of the game is what I'm asking.
Within the story of the game, it is a relic in the 1800s.
Okay. I was wondering that because that sounds mechanically very, very similar to how you learn about the backstory in Tom Clancy's The Division. Because you have a device that can look at things like there's bullet holes and what are the shape of the bullet holes, and that can tell you what kind of bullet it was and where it was shot from and all this other stuff. And you could create a holographic recreation of what happened here.
It's very similar to that, yeah.
Oh, so this is how Agent so-and-so died.
But again, the reason I say it's part of the reason I say it skirts the genre is because and it's not really spoiling anything because they tell you this sort of at the beginning, with the first bodies you find. But like, you find out that like, oh, this ship fought the Kraken, and these guys did not do so well. But then there was a lot more to it, and you have to sort of discover that.
Interesting. That does sound like it would be an interesting game to play.
Yeah,
I might stream that on my channel.
it's actually quite fun.
It sounds like it.
Yeah,
I like
it's
that mechanic because that was one of the funnest things to do in the.
If it's not horror, it's at the very least just generally spooky, and that makes it okay for this episode.
It's kind of like everyone gone for the rapture, or whatever. Like
it's
used to have people, and it's kind of spooky because like this is empty and it shouldn't be empty, but there's not actually a horror monster coming after you.
No, you're just in the aftermath finding out what happened.
That is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's like the opposite of the God of War / Doom effect of can't have PTSD if you are the traumatic event. But I wanted to bring that back around to RPG Maker horror games, Outlast and the Evil Within. I wanted to talk a little bit about Outlast and the Evil Within and how they sort of like treat their horror, because in Outlast and we're talking about the first game. I know the second game is a little different. You're like a reporter and you have a camera and you're running from this one particular dude who's like, "Here, piggy," the whole game long. But like, there's always a sense of like you have to run, you have to get away. Like, there's not really a way to fight this guy or defeat this guy. You're just stuck in here now, and you need to find a way out, and that's the goal of the game. The Evil Within, you're a policeman armed with a weapon, armed with ammunition. The Evil Within is a problem, but you can physically fight and kill that problem to some degree. You're not gonna be like you're not going to destroy the infestation. I'm pretty sure that's not how that game ends. I didn't get to play it all the way through, but you can fight and protect yourself, which I think that's as attitudes, that's things that happen, and I'm curious if that's maybe where you draw the line between horror and thriller, perhaps. Because in horror, you can't fight the monster. All you can do is try to get away.
You can fight the monsters in Resident Evil.
Fair. But I would say that because zombie is a specific type of horror that allows.
But it's not just zombies. You fight Nemesis like 5 times.
That just reminds me of the meme of like, my favorite thing about Nemesis in that game is like, if he walks up to you and you just like pull out a rocket launcher, he like stops and just turns around like, I'm not fucking with that today. That's like, yeah, bitch, run. Which completely takes the scary out of him. But it was hilarious to discover.
Yeah, I imagine they did that mechanically for a very specific reason, but it is funny.
The other thing I think is funny is that Mr. X / Tyrant's like only real attack in the new Resident Evil 2 is just Falcon Punch.
Yeah.
He doesn't do anything else. He just punches you.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say earlier when you were talking about like, oh, they turn into a giant flower monster or whatever. I was gonna say like, yeah, or they just become like ridiculously unnaturally buff.
Yeah.
And that's what Mr. X is.
But yeah, I feel like in that regard, there's definitely a sense, kind of the Mr. X feeling is what I get out of the Here Piggy guy. Like, he's just big and strong. He's not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
He's not 7 foot tall.
He's not a 7 foot tall monster per se.
With a hat.
Because the thing is like when you look at him, I've always thought about it like, he's big, he's strong, and he's ugly. And I could see why he hates the world, because everything he is something the world would just be like, you suck, boo!
I just remembered that I actually spent money to get the fucking Mr. X skin for the handler in fucking Monster Hunter World.
In what?
In Monster Hunter World.
Oh, in Monster Hunter World, you got the. Oh, right.
Yeah. I'm just remembering that I actually spent money on that. It
Well,
looks
yeah,
so
so, like,
horrible.
and as a difference in the Evil Within, you're running around and you're kind of doing a little bit of detective work, and like whatever the monster is, like it has little like I don't remember if the Evil Within had zombies per se. I think they were. Um, but I remember you fight and kill things, and you have a gun and you have ammunition. But similarly to Resident Evil, there's like a hard limit on how much you can have. So you have to be careful, and you have to make every fucking shot count. So I think that does, in some degree, I think that's where the survival part of survival horror comes in. Is like the realization that I only have 5 bullets, and at best I can only kill 5 enemies with that, and only if I hit them in the weak spot, puts you in a place where you're like, you have to be so careful. I have a weapon, I can fight these things, but am I willing to spend my limited resources on killing that little zombie when I know there's probably a nastier monster around the corner?
What?
My precious ammunition.
Yes. Meanwhile, if you just pick Jill, you get a knife instead.
Oh, she has a gun, doesn't she?
No, Chris has a gun. Jill has a knife. That's why there's like such a huge argument over like who to take, because Jill gives you more space, more carry space, which everyone complains about because Jill is like this little petite woman and Chris is this huge honking muscular man.
Yeah,
somehow
Chris
Jill
is.
can
I'm gonna
carry more
literally
shit.
fucking punch a boulder in half.
Yeah, but Jill can carry shit. But Chris starts off with a gun. So some people were like, "No, fuck that. I'm taking the gun." And some people were like, "I think the inventory space is going to be better for me in the long run, so we're going to take that." And most people who play that game for like internet content will tell you Jill is the better choice because of the inventory space, because they're not wrong in saying in the long run that will be much more useful. But there are just people who are like, I don't care. I want to just
Gun.
zombies the second they show up, so I don't have to worry about zombie problems while I'm trying to solve puzzles.
Well, I mean, just use knife.
Knife sucks, though. That's a reality. Knife sucks.
Knife do suck.
Especially in that janky game where they purposely messed with the controls.
Mhm.
Knife do suck.
So most of my exposure to RPG Maker horror games are like, if I can be blunt, like Markiplier fan games and shit, or Jacksepticeye fan games, because like that's what they play on their channels, and that's kind of how I got introduced to the genre.
Please
I know
the
there's other
books
ones,
then.
and they've played some ones that aren't fan games of theirs. There's one I remember where you're running around like this. You're a little girl running around trying to figure out what happens or what happened in the past, and there's something about one of the monster characters was just a ghost that died and drowned in this river and has just been trying to communicate to anyone, because she just doesn't want to be forgotten. But she comes off initially as just this horrifying, like, come to me ghost monster. And it's not really until like really close to the end of the game that you start figuring out, oh, this thing really isn't as horrific as we thought it was. You know?
Yeah. I don't know what game you're talking about though.
I don't either. Somebody listening later on is going to be like, oh, he's talking about this game and it came out on this year. I'm sorry.
Either that or just nobody ever will
Yeah, that too.
remember what the fuck you're
They'll,
talking
they'll
about.
be looking up. They'll just be looking up like what RPG Maker horror game had this.
I was gonna make one of those. an RPG horror game,
Why
and then
didn't
it
you?
never happened.
Well, why didn't you?
Uh, the person that I was gonna make it with went to jail.
I mean, that's a pretty good reason.
That would definitely put a damper on things.
Yeah.
What do you do? Commit tax fraud?
No,
You don't need to answer the question. You don't need
Please,
to answer the
please,
I wasn't
please don't.
going to.
Even if you did, I would cut it out.
I wasn't going to answer the question, but that's fine.
But anyway, yeah. So I feel like that was. I also feel like Outlast and The Evil Within kind of came out just a little early, because Outlast 2 being out now definitely has had much better reception, I would argue, than the first game did, because those two came out again at the same time that FNAF and Tattletale and all those other like indie horror titles like that were getting really, really big. That's also why Undertale managed to get really, really big, was because it came out in the same time period.
Mhm.
I feel bad for Toby Fox because I don't think he had any idea what he was stepping into.
Probably not. Or he
But,
had every idea, and he's actually a genius.
One or the other.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna be honest with you. I really don't think it's the second one.
No, I don't either.
I just
think-
given that most
I
indie
think-
developers are that way, I'm gonna say it's probably not that he's
I
just
think
a genius.
he's aware of it now with Deltarune. He has a better idea what he's stepping into, the kind of fandom he's
hmm
talking to.
He knows what
and
he's
stuff.
capable of.
Yeah,
knows
so
knows
I think
knows his abilities and limits, and knows his audience, and that's really what helps you make a good game.
now I'm thinking there were some horror games that came. Oh, I did want to talk about PT because I actually did watch a full fucking thing of PT.
Did you watch like a deep
Oh.
dive of PT?
Did that game ever get finished, bro?
No, it's just well, I mean, technically speaking, yes, because
the
PT.
demo, PT as its own separate thing.
Well, here's
is
the
a
thing.
product.
PT stands for playable trailer. It's a demo. It always was a demo. So yes, PT was finished. The game that PT was meant to be was canceled.
Yeah,
Ah,
it was a Silent Hill game.
Yeah.
yeah, I know.
With and Guillermo del Toro was working on it as well
Yeah.
as the guy in Silent Hill.
Yeah, and instead we got Norman Reedus and the Funky Fetus.
Yeah, that's a much more appreciated use of Guillermo del Toro's time.
That's fucking hilarious. I don't know if you're making it reference to an actual thing that exists, or if you're
Yes, it's
making-
called Death Stranding.
Oh right, yes.
Yeah, Norman Reedus and the Funky Magic Fetus.
Yeah, I never played Death Stranding, and Death Stranding is one of those games where like there was so
Walking
much hype around
simulator.
it, and like as soon as I saw all of the stuff with it, I was like, yeah, I don't care.
Death
and
Stranding can be
internet's gonna
summed
love
up-
this, and I can go. They can suck a dick. I don't care.
Death Stranding can be summed up like this: Norman Reedus, Amazon Prime, and monster product placement, and that's the whole game.
I do recall it came out and because there was so much hype for it, and it came out and that shit dumped fast.
Probably
I
because
do
of the
recall that.
horrible amount of monster product placement in that game.
You mean you're talking about the energy drink, right?
Yes, the energy drink Monster. It was fucking everywhere. You could tell who paid to produce that game.
No, people definitely do not like it when their experience is constantly interrupted by the visual equivalent of, "Hey, do you need a pick me up in the middle of the day?" Like,
Hey, Sonny, feeling a bit low? Ever wanted to hype yourself up real fucking quick? Here's some fucking Monster for you. That'll
Here's
be
300. Here's 300 milligrams of fucking caffeine.
That'll be
just thinking about like
$5 per can.
the Kyle monster meme now.
Yeah. So, I have a list here if you're interested of some horror games, and I figure I could just list them off, and
Yeah.
y'all can talk about them if you've got anything to say about them.
Go ahead. Cause I've played very few horror games, but there's a few.
So, Slender the Arrival. Boy, oh boy.
That was the second
Um,
one, right? That was the one that had
I was gonna say
fucking Jeff the Killer in it.
Yeah.
Okay,
I was gonna
I
say
haven't
that's the
played
one
it,
where
but
you
I've
actually
seen
have
a
like
lot of it.
levels and you.
Yeah, that wasn't the
I
8
played
pages.
one. Yeah, I was gonna say like that actually kind of pulls us back to creepypasta era, and there was definitely a
Mhm.
lot of effort to capitalize on that. There were a ton of games that were made around some of these creepypasta characters, and the only ones that really made it were the Slender games.
Right, and then that was functionally murdered brutally by Sony when they made a fucking horrible movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's fair.
that's
Yeah.
that's sort of when the era of
That is
Slenderman
a
ended.
well, we always knew that the era of Slenderman was going to end when it became like when a major company commercialized on it.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
Because at that point, the thing that made Slenderman popular goes away. Because what was big about Slenderman and the Rake and Jeff the Killer and everything that sort of revolved around Slenderman is these were urban legends born on the internet that grew practically only on the internet. And that's why like the horror games didn't kill it was because that was more internet stuff. Um, that was the slow creeping horror.
Yeah.
Like you know something's there, you don't know where it is, you catch little glimpses of it, you know it knows where you are, and you have
Yeah.
no clue when it's just going to kill you.
And what I find really unfortunate about it was and you know, I'm a little bit biased because I was very much into like Marble Hornets and Tribe 12 and all of that, like the Slenderman universe
Slenderman hybrid.
stuff. Yeah, yeah. And I enjoyed that. It was a good story. It was good content, but like it's unfortunate now that these days what we have, rather than that sort of slow creeping horror, is fucking, hey guys, you seen the newest Five Nights at Freddy's? Oh, hello neighbor, the super update. You know,
Another thing is like horror games now.
Hello
They just
Neighbor is
kind
so
of
much of
like
a horror
they
game.
kind of just like point
Baldi's Basics.
fucking
Oh
big.
boy.
Well, the thing is, like horror games now, a lot of the time they'll just basically tell you where to go and what to do and shit, and it's not the same
Mhm.
as it used to be, because
I
the old school games had more of a feel of like you figure out what the fuck is going on. I'm not gonna tell you shit,
yeah.
and you had to piece it
I
together
remember the
by
other game
yourself.
I was trying to think about
Hmm.
Amnesia.
Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Yes.
Weren't there
Amnesia
multiple
was
Amnesia
another one of
games?
those slow
There
creeping
were
horror
actually
games.
there was a game before Amnesia called Penumbra, and then after Amnesia there was Amnesia: Machine for Pigs, was the
Yes.
third game. Yeah, and that here's the thing I'll say about Amnesia. From what I saw of the actual game, or any of the games, they were good. They were actually, for being made in like the Unreal Engine or whatever they were made in. They were pretty decent survival horror games. I'll also say
Amnesia
that
is where Tiny Box Tim comes from.
yeah, I will also say that I don't think that I really got the Amnesia experience because most of what I saw was the player created maps, and that's a mess.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. That is a mess. Giving your players power to create stuff is great, but also it can really kill
Yeah, as
the vibe you're going
you know,
for.
again, Markiplier is going to come up a lot when we're talking about survival horror because he did a lot of that stuff. But like
That is how he
The
exploded
whole-
his channel once
the
he
whole-
hit that plateau.
where find the jelly bean? What? Where's the jelly bean? Is this the jelly bean?
Where's the
like-
blacksmith?
That whole thing, like
Yeah.
that was the sort of stuff that I saw of Amnesia, where it's like, oh, this game is kind of stupid.
See, you're right. You didn't get the Amnesia experience because in the if you play the actual game, you wake up to a note that you're not sure who wrote the note. And as you find a couple more notes, you realize, oh fuck, this is me talking to myself after purposely taking something that would remove my memories of what happened. And now you have to ask yourself, do I want to find out what I went out of my way to forget? Or do I want to just escape? And your experience is going to be based on the choice you make with that. And either way, you've got a monster running around with a sack who's just trying to find people to throw in the sack and grind up in the meat machine to make more monster. So
Ew.
yeah,
It's like the Strobe
it-
from Quake.
Yep, pretty much. And then you have an aquatic variant of the monster that is completely invisible to you, and the only way for you to know that it's there is to see the motion in the water.
That's horrifying there.
Yeah. That's the one that's actually scary.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the other monster's scary too. It's just easier to avoid.
Here's another fun horror genre game that was it was okay. Alan Wake.
Oh yeah, Alan
they
Wake
did a
was one I
remaster of that.
actually played the whole game and the DLC for.
I enjoyed the concept of like you gotta remove the shadows from someone before you can murder them brutally.
Wasn't
Uh,
he like schizophrenic or something? Alan Wake?
There was some weirdness going on with Alan Wake for sure.
He definitely had some
person
kind of
you
mental
played-
illness.
So, the person you played was the main character of a book being written by the real Alan Wake,
mhm.
who was being forced to make this book by some entity that kind of straddled the line between worlds.
Yeah.
In order to open a portal so that said entity could just enter the real world and start devouring the souls of the innocent or whatever. So yeah, it's a very weird.
Some Edgar Allan Poe shit right there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so it very much did have like a sort of dark Edgar Allan Poe type stuff.
Yeah. And it was I remember it being cool, if not being a little bit long-winded, and the ending
Yes,
not making a
is
whole lot of
long-winded.
sense.
Yeah. I did not like the DLC because the DLC, for what it was a really, really poorly disguised attempt.
You're talking
say,
about
TV bad, bring book back because I make money on book.
you talk about Alan Wake's American Nightmare?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a mess. That was a mess and a half. It's like, hey, remember everything you liked about Alan Wake? It's gone.
Yeah. The final, I mean, come on, the final boss was literally like a bunch of TVs
Hmm.
that made a face that you had to like individually, kind of like the second boss in Persona 5 actually. You had to like individually kill each piece of the face.
Yeah, it
And each one
was
had
dumb.
different abilities.
It was
Oh,
dumb.
bad. The original Alan Wake though was really good. I did like
Yeah.
how it, because again there was definitely a sense of like, because there were times where you were out during the day and times where you were out during the night. And during the day, it was just a normal town. You walked around, you got some stuff. To be fair, there was a point to having the daytime areas because you would go out and like get items that would help you later. You could go to the store and buy, ammunition for your gun and whatnot. And if you were lucky enough to find the the flare gun early on. Ooh boy. The flare gun was perfect because it could strip them of their shadows and proceed to obliterate them with one shot.
Mhm.
But you got very few flares. So
Yeah, I was gonna say you get like no ammo though for it.
Yeah. And then you also have to deal with, like, the thing that stuck out to me, right? Which this is gonna be really ironic given the name, but the thing that made me go like, oh shit, about Alan Wake was the fact that you at the beginning you meet with Stucky at the bar, and he
Mhm.
gives you the key to your mansion or your
your little
cabin.
house on the
Yeah.
lake. Yeah.
And but then like you run off to the cabin and then Stucky shows up at the bar and he's like, "Where's this Alan Wake guy I'm supposed to meet?" And you're like, "Who the fuck did I just go meet?"
That was the entity.
Yeah, and then Stucky shows up later on as one of the shadow creatures, and it's just like this game, holy shit, the twists.
Yeah, and then you had the little old lady who constantly yabbers on about the well lit room. And when you
Yeah,
first meet her, you're like, okay, whatever, crazy lady, go away. And then like halfway through the game, you're like, I think crazy lady might be onto
yeah,
something.
I think Crazy Lady was right. Yep, and then you have to like there's a whole you're I think you had like an outdoor you had a barn or some sort of stage or something, and you have to fight just like a fuck ton of the shadow people with your best buddy George Costanza.
Yeah, I don't remember very
What
much
Alan
of
Wake did
that
a
game,
good job
honestly.
with was it knew it was a horror game, and it knew that it was a long horror. So it did break up
Hmm.
the horror moments with moments that were a little more like wholesome and oh dude this is cool kind of things to kind of like shake it up a little bit and keep you interested in the story they were trying to tell without just drawing you into an unending um, pull on your anxiety that would just end with people getting exhausted and going I can't handle more than like 2 hours of this, you know.
Hmm. And the other thing
And
that
that was
I
a
the other thing that was really cool about it too was how like the radio host always had something to say about what you were doing during the nighttime sections or like the stuff you'd
yeah,
done
but
on
he like
previous
cleverly
days.
never said that it was you.
Yeah, and it was very cool because the ambiance that made with the radio host basically talking about what was going on and just like giving you hints about what's going on. It's very subtle, but it was very is really cool in the story.
It was a very
I just
nice touch.
remember that was like everyone knows that that Markiplier gif where he's like, "No, thank you." Like like Alan Wake was the first game that made me have that kind of reaction. Or
No, thank
I
you.
remember I walked into a house, um, my flashlight's on, and I'm looking around and looking at stuff, and like I actually, for me specifically, this is why it hit so hard for me because I noticed that there was a house off the side of the like road, which is clearly not like the main way you're supposed to go or whatever. So I went out of my way to circle around the house and make sure there was no like shadow monsters waiting for me if I walked inside. Then I kind of like took a step aside the door and shined my light around the house. Again, I was like, all right, cool. There's nothing here, so or there's nobody here, so I should. This is probably just a place where they hid like some secret achievement get item or something. So I proceeded to just kind of like move into the living room and kind of started looking around and seeing if I could interact with anything. Turned around and some shadow dude walks past the window, like just
Yeah.
casually walks past the window. And here's the thing: that window's about a foot from the door, and this shadow dude don't walk past the door. And I
Mhm.
was like, "Oh, fuck you, game! I am not playing like that." And I remember I got out the door, turned, and there is nothing there. And I'm like, "Oh, fuck you! Like, no, this is not okay. Like, where did it go? Where did it go?
Yeah. And
Interrupt my
then
fucking achievement hunt."
and then there was the other thing too with the TVs where they would play little bits of this TV show that was just a parody
I'm
of.
quantum immortal.
Yeah,
That's what
it's
I
just a
remember.
parody of the TV show Quantum Leap, but it's like really badly written. Uh, so the Among the Sleep is a game. I don't know
Never
too
heard of it.
much. It's a horror game where you play as a child. I don't really know too much about it. If you ever seen the baby player animation, he's playing Among the Sleep for
Is
that
that
one.
the one? Is that the one where you're like you're running around like a little toddler, and there's like little monsters hiding in the dark, like under the beds and under the chairs and stuff. And mom
Mhm.
and dad definitely can't see that, and they just tell you that it's not real.
Yeah. That's the whole crux of that particular horror game is it's like, oh, you're a kid and you can see things.
Interesting. Yeah, I do remember that. I never played it. I weirdly associate that game with Octodad because
Octodad.
Markiplier's gameplay of that game came out at the same time as the Game Grumps or Steam Train Octodad gameplay was coming out, and I was kind of watching both of them off and on. Like they came off. They were put out on alternating days during the week.
Mm-hmm. Um. Hunt Showdown. I've never really heard of. It's apparently a horror thriller battle royale, which sounds kind of dumb.
Can we talk about Alien Isolation a little bit? That's a more recent.
Yeah, we can talk about Alien Isolation. Mm-hmm.
To just be really quick, it is about 11:30. Did you need to be getting out of here soon?
I got about half an hour left.
Okay.
Man, I can't wait to see all the Squid Games costumes in a couple days.
You want to know something I thought was hilarious? I thought Squid Game was a joke because the first time someone mentioned it to me, I had no idea it was a movie that had come out. The first time anyone had mentioned it to me, they mentioned it as a Splatoon joke. And I thought they were just making a joke about Splatoon the game because there was some announcement recently about Splatoon 3. Because someone made a joke about Squid Game 3. And I was like, oh, okay, so the Squid Game thing is just a Splatoon joke. And then like 2 whole fucking weeks later, I'm like, wait, this is an actual thing on TV?
Yeah. See,
and it has nothing to do with that.
I've attempted with little success to find out what exactly the fuck Squid Game is. And all people will tell me is like, imagine you put a bunch of poor people in a room together and told them to kill each other. And I'm like, how can you make that into a TV show? That would be over in like 5 minutes.
It's not quite that simple.
It's
like
that simple.
The first episode is all about the main character. It tells you about, okay, well, here's where he is in life. He owes these people money. He still lives with his mom. His wife left him and took his daughter. He gambles away all of his money. He meets this guy in a train station on his way home late at night, and the dude offers him, you can come play these games, and if you win, we'll give you money. Doesn't decide to tell him that.
Do you remember the movie that came out where you had the idea was like an influencer on this app could be asked to do crazy things by the people watching on the app, and as you went, became crazier and more illegal and more morally questionable, but you were in it now, and whoever controlled the app was basically like, if you try to get out now, I'm going to kill you.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Interesting. Do you remember? Okay, I would say Squid Game is like, I'm trying to find other IPs I could liken it to. It's like Maze Runner. No, it's like The Hunger Games meets Cube. That would be Cubes. That would be my.
What is Cubes?
At its core, Cubes was like the idea was that people would go into this maze of cubes, and they were like these giant cube rooms, and you had to solve a puzzle to get out of the cube.
You mean the
and you would-
movie The Cube?
is that what it was called? The Cube?
Are you talking about the movie The Cube, which
thought
had
it
a
was called
sequel that
Cube.
was fucking terrible?
I feel like, hey,
Yeah.
hold on,
At the
hold
end of
on,
the day, what it was
Hold
like
on.
a
Dave, hold on, Ringo.
What?
What is Squid Game?
Oh yeah, I was in the middle of basically they take a bunch of people who are leeches in society who owe people money and stuff like that, and they have them compete in various like games and stuff, and a bunch of them die, and if you win, you get money.
Okay, now see, you could have just explained that to me, Dave, instead of going 25 directions I've never heard of.
I'm trying to be creative and make more content, and then you want to complain.
The problem in this instance with your being creative is you're
He
like,
doesn't know what you're talking about.
it's just like this thing. Well, I've never heard of that. Okay, then it's just like this thing. Well, I've never heard of that either. It's like walking me into an art gallery and I don't know who Van Gogh is, and I don't know who Van Gogh's really the only artist I know. Okay, yeah, like I don't know who Van Gogh is. Like I've never heard of any artists before. I have no idea what I'm looking at, and you're trying to explain to me the nuance of art, and I'm just like, I don't get it.
See, what I was trying to get at, is the concept of Squid. Yes, the concept of Squid Game is not a new concept. They did a similar concept in the Hunger Games. They did a similar concept in the Cube.
Well, the Hunger Games was a little bit different because it wasn't like, okay, well, this guy owes money, we're gonna ask him to.
No, in the Hunger Games,
it's voluntary. In Squid Game, it's voluntary. In Hunger Games, it's like.
And there was another movie, I can't remember the name of it, where you would have people download an app, and it was like, if you do this challenge, you get money. And it would start out with stuff like, go out on your motorcycle and do like donuts in front of the police station or something. It's ultimately harmless, but you're throwing a middle finger in the cop's face. And then if you can get away from them, you make money. But like, it would slowly escalate to things like, go rob this item from this store, go kill this person, go do, and like, when this person, the main character, realizes, this is not an app for me to do challenges and make money. This is an app a psychopath made to get other people to do his dirty work. I'm not doing this. Then the psychopath contacts her and says, as part of getting this app, you gave me access to all of your personal information, and if you don't do what I say, I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to murder your family, and then I'm going to kill you.
Fun.
So now she's stuck doing these things. And I don't remember the name of that movie, but again, I'm just saying, like, this isn't a new. I was trying to make the point that Squid Game isn't a new concept, and also I don't like Squid Game.
Also, I could do an entire episode on how Hunger Games, Maze Runner, and Divergent is all just the same movie to me.
Oh my god!
Yes.
Dude.
Oh my god!
It's exactly the fucking same as Hunger Games.
I could not tell you the difference.
I watched the first two Hunger Games a few days ago, with my girlfriend, and I kept thinking, it's like, wait, are we watching Divergent or are we watching Hunger Games?
It also doesn't help that like 2 of 3 of those series have the same lead actress.
Yeah, dude. It's like, what the fuck? They're the same fucking movie.
But anyway, we were Alien Isolation.
Yeah, we were trying to talk about that.
Yeah.
Alien Isolation is good because, like, I think my favorite thing about Alien Isolation is the idea that the monster learns as you play. So the tactics you utilize, they're not usable forever.
No.
An Alien Isolation, because I mentioned this earlier, Alien Isolation does what Dead Space does really well too, which is you're on a space station that is just, for some unknown reason, completely fucking empty. You know, until you meet the alien and realize that's why it's empty.
Until you meet insert the reason.
It's like, and you're just like, of course, you know, it's called Alien Isolation, and if you have any familiarity with the Alien titles, you know what you're going up against.
Mhm.
But what Alien Isolation does that I think really helps it feel even more horrifying, but Dead Space didn't have in it, was that you can walk around and meet these like AI robots,
Mhm.
and they're like fully AI intelligent entities, but so like in the movies they had these ones that looked like they were human, acted like they were human. These ones are very much, they're clearly intelligent, but they're stunted. Like they don't have the same level. The idea is that they're made by a different company, and that company does not have access to the same technology as the one that made the better AIs. But when you initially run into them, you're like, "Oh my god, people!" And then you walk up, and this guy turns to you, and he's like the most pasty-faced, obviously not a real human, made fake by something, made to look human-ish by something, and talking to you in this very, very stunted, discarded voice. And you're like, I'm not comfortable.
Yeah, I imagine you
That
wouldn't
is
be.
the closest thing you get to dealing with people in that game. Like, you have one cutscene where you deal with people, like, right at the beginning. And I don't think you deal with people again for, like, the rest of the game. It's just those AI bots. And it's really unsettling.
They're really driving home the whole
Doesn't it have
isolation
multiplayer?
point, huh?
Doesn't it have multiplayer or does it not? I don't remember.
I don't remember. I don't think
I know there's an oh
Isolation
no, Alien Fireteam has multiplayer.
Alien
That's
Fire
the newer
Team.
one. That's the newer one. I think it's called Fireteam.
The other thing that I know they did, but I never had the guts to play the game this way, was you could set it up to listen to you. So if you were like, the alien would hear you and be like, "Oh, there's a dude over there," and come hunt you down. Um,
That
I never had the guts to do that
that
because
fucking rocks as a gameplay concept.
I
Yeah, it
agree. I
does.
definitely agree that as a gameplay concept, the idea of allowing your natural reactions to things in the real world to affect your game experience, I do think that's very cool. I never did it with Alien Isolation because I knew I would die every 2 seconds.
It's like I'm
Because
gonna
I
shit
am
myself.
I am definitely the kind of guy who would like not notice one of the robot dudes as I'm running through a hallway to try to get away from something, and then I escape, and the alien runs off in another direction, and I'm like, and so like I'd be really quiet with my like relief. Yeah, okay, okay. And then I turn around and the fucking robot would be like, "Ah, Jesus!" And, and that would be like my actual real world response. And immediately that alien comes back to murder me. I
Yeah.
know that would happen way too often. So I was just like, nah, I'm not playing this game this way.
Nah, bro, it makes the game more fun. It makes it more engaging.
Also, I
Mhm.
can't control sometimes because my roommate will just kind of like barge and be like, "Hey, yo, I'm doing like," I'm like, "God damn it, I'm dead now. Thank you." You know, like that also would annoy
That's
the
a
shit
good
out
point.
of me.
Or like if you got the window open and a fucking asshole on a motorcycle goes by. Thanks, random
Or
guy. I'm
or
fucking
or
now.
you know, someone decides today's the day to rip their girlfriend a new one. You know, or some garbage happens that's completely like, yeah. I don't live in a place where I can
And like
soundproof my
that's what you
windows.
hear through the wall, you know.
Yeah.
It's just fucking.
And then like suddenly something slams into the wall, and
Yeah,
you're
just
like, and you're just like,
oh,
because you've
Yeah,
been
your next door
like,
neighbor just fucking body
dialed
slams the
fucking in.
wall and
Yeah,
knocks your
yeah.
TV over and shit.
Or not even that. It's
The entire refrigerator just
like
falls.
your neighbor gets mad and like throws their controller or something, and it hits the wall, and because you're so like dialed in focus, that sudden loud noise, and you're like, what the fuck? And then you say that, and then the alien comes and kills you.
hmm
Shit like that. Like shit like that is why I did not play Alien Isolation with like the sound microphone stuff enabled. Like I just felt that was way too much that was not controllable in that. So yeah, that's my experience with Alien Isolation. Did either of you guys play it?
I
Nope.
did not play it. Nope.
Huh.
Yeah, so it's just you.
Yep.
So here's the thing. Ringo might know. Dave, you might know it too. I guess it depends on whether or not you ever encountered it in the wild. Good old clock tower.
Ah. Clock
Nope.
towel. That's not
Nope.
very scary. Ding.
Oh, there it is. Not the scissorman.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you guys
Clock
got.
Tower. So Clock Tower is an old. It's like a PS1 era point and click survival horror genre game, where like you play. If I'm not mistaken, you play a girl that gets adopted, and like lives in this manor where that has a clock tower on top, and you discover like at nighttime all the horrible shit that's happening, including the scissorman, which is just like this really weird short gremlin dude with horrifically gigantic scissors, and you have to
head
like
trimmers or some shit.
yeah
Sounds like Beef, but with a horror monster inserted into it.
and you have to like solve puzzles and shit and get out basically. And it don't sound like much, I know, but for the time, it was actually one of the better ones out there. And I know they've made follow-ups to it since, but I don't think any of them have been like as well received as the first one was, because that one, it was again PS1 era. There wasn't a whole lot of that around, and Clock Tower was one of those ones that was like, it did a lot of like psychological thriller type stuff and like body gore and stuff like that, where it's like
I hate body gore, like body horror.
yeah.
Body horror is the quickest way to give me night terrors. And again, it's one of those things like I don't know how to explain it because it's one of those I will be completely and wholly unmoved by it when I'm looking at it.
Mhm.
Like watching fuck, what was that anime with the Parasite? That's what it's called. So like watching all these bodies get like morphed and distorted and stuff, like I'll watch it and I'll be like, whatever. Like it doesn't initially have any effect on me. I could be wholly unbothered by it. I won't sleep that night.
Yeah, that
My
night
brain just
you'll
decides
try to
that's
sleep
the time to try
and
to figure
you'll
it out.
just see the Hall of Endless Teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to briefly touch on Dead by Daylight, I believe it's called.
Dead by Daylight. Dead by Daylight. I know Ringo has got stuff to say about it. Dead by Daylight is the Super Smash Brothers of horror genre monsters.
Yes, it is. What I wanted to talk about
Wow.
wasn't necessarily just so we're clear. I didn't want to necessarily talk about it as a horror game because I don't really think of it as a horror game.
Well, okay. See, they
Let
used
me
to
let me finish
describe
my
it.
let me finish my statement. I wanted to say that it's sort of a transformation of the horror genre, and I wanted to talk about how that's interesting, how it's
Kind of
not
like
what you would
horror
consider a horror
action.
game. It definitely has horror settings, horror elements, and
It's very
horror
horror
monsters,
themed.
but it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like a horror game. And I kind of
No,
wanted
it
to talk
doesn't.
about using. I wanted to see if we could springboard off of that and talk about what creates what feels like a horror game versus like having all the elements of a horror game but not having that same feeling in it.
Well, I think part of what makes Dead by Daylight stand out in that regard is that it's competitive.
It is.
Yeah, where it's like you have the survivors that are being played by people, but you also have the monster that's being played by a person.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's all it's all a group of people playing in a match with each other
Mhm.
against each other, and basically
And
and because there's a clear objective on either side of what needs to get done in order to either escape the trial or for the killer keep the survivors from escaping the trial. And because you get like a rank, you get rewarded. The better you play, the higher your rank goes. I feel like there's an incentive to play well, and it gives it kind of gives a feeling of not horror but like action, because it's like a chase.
Yeah.
And the thing I
I
think
definitely
that's missing largely from Dead by Daylight that makes it, perhaps not as much of a horror game to people is the fact that you don't have any of the mystery or the uncertainty or the lack of control that you normally have in horror games, where it's like you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know what's behind that door. Whereas in Dead by Daylight, there's a set map, there's set objectives, and you know that
There's
there's
a lot of maps, but
well, yeah, but that's my point. You go into a map knowing this is
will know the map.
this is this map, this is this character, this character has this abilities, and you know that there's this enemy, this enemy has this abilities. There's not a whole lot of mystery there. It's just a lot of this person versus this person, right?
But even then, I was gonna say, like, you can, all the abilities that the survivors have, the perks that they have, you can unlock them and use them on other people. So even that doesn't even, you know what I mean? And same with the killer. You can use the killer's perks on other killers. So it's like each killer isn't always gonna be just because this person's playing Pyramid Head and this other person's also playing Pyramid Head. It doesn't mean they're going to play exactly the same.
Yeah,
it's going to be two different. Every match is going to have a different play style.
If someone plays the doctor, you don't hear the survivors being like saying stuff that makes it sound like, oh my god, I'm so scared of the doctor. You hear people going, oh, we find a doctor, he's gonna have his fine bitches button. Like it sounds more like a COD lobby than it does a
right. Like I was saying, the element of like shock and mystery and like uncertainty, all of that is taken away. It's just this horrible thing is out to kill you, here's your objective,
this is what
and go do it. Yeah.
Well, I feel like there is, if you get into the lore, because there's a fair bit of lore in Dead by Daylight that a lot of people just ignore for the gameplay, which you can definitely get away with doing because it's a good game. It's very well made, and there's not a lot of other. It's unique. It's not a lot of other games like it. But there is a fair chunk of lore that you can unlock through doing challenges and stuff, and quite frankly, some of the lore is actually really like fun to read, and it's very like detailed, and
there's definitely a lot more horror in that lore stuff.
Yeah, the lore is where the horror is at. The actual gameplay, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was gonna say, like, not to say that there isn't any horror, because you still have that, like, for example, if someone's playing Michael Myers, who is a killer,
yeah, you can very easily get fucking jump scared.
Oh yeah, so like to say that you know for sure what's behind that door, no, you don't. You might go through that door and you are face to face with fucking Jason.
Well, yeah, right, true, like, but
oh shit, like
my point there, my point there being, it's not like when you are watching a horror film or playing a horror game and there's all that tense build up. And then when you open the door and see the monster, you're like, oh, fuck, oh, shit. There's none of that. It's just like, oh, god damn it, he's over here, fuck.
Yeah.
Or if you're playing with the right people, you don't hear it's over here. You just hear. Then you're like, well, wherever he is, that's where the killer is.
It's great to hear nothing like that,
right? Yeah, you cut out, buddy. It's
oh man, I screamed is what I did. I was like, you just hear like, I had to do it so quiet because the fucking microphone.
Yeah,
maybe turn off noise suppression. I wouldn't
Oh,
recommend it though.
actually, yeah, that probably would do it.
Yeah,
You just
but
hear,
it
like,
is
screaming.
or you'll hear like hey
Damn,
Kyle, hey Kyle, what you doing over there, buddy? Um Nothing, man. I'm just restarting a
Kyle.
generator. I just, pulling a generic white boy name out of my ass.
Drinking a monster, punching my wall.
Just like
You know.
I'm just restarting the generator. Oh, is that so? Is that what you're doing? Okay. And then they just start going and like, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you. Or whatever. It's
It is
a
fun
lot
to
of
watch some of these YouTubers play the
yeah.
game and like
It
kind of like
has
how they flip flop between
it's
the like, oh my
taken
god, where he is, to like,
the
I'm gonna get you.
it's taken the faces of horror and put them all in one place. But the actual elements that make up like a horror experience, not all of them are there, and that makes it less of a horror and more of a competition.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
See, I wasn't, because that was something I was thinking about. It was like I wasn't quite sure what or how to put into words what was missing from that. But you did a good job of saying like you're right. There is like this slow buildup of tension and anxiety in a horror film or a horror game that like culminates in this massive release of fear. And to be
Mm-hmm.
fair, like once that massive release of fear is over, you're like sitting on your couch just going bum 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 bum.
Right, but in
And
Dead by
and you
Daylight,
I feel
fully
like
relax
I
back
it's
feel like in
down.
Dead
that's
by
just not
Daylight it's
there.
more a case. I feel like in Dead by Daylight it's more a case of like people are more concerned um about certain things in the game that don't work how they're supposed to, and they're more, hung up on like the mechanics of the game, spaghetti code being sloppy and shit. But uh it really doesn't hold for most people that play it. It doesn't really hold, especially if you play killer. Because if you play killer, there's no fucking horror for you. You are the horror. Like, you know what I mean?
You can't
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
have PTSD if you are the traumatic event.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I feel, because I play both killer and survivor, and I'm fairly decent at both. I feel like it's, for me, it's less of like a scary game and more of just, it's got a dark theme, and it's horror themed, but
It's
it's like a
horror
horror
adjacent.
themed competitive action game.
Yeah, and it's a really
That makes sense.
interesting way to sort of wrap things up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought would be a good thing because
Yeah.
it's a good way to discuss what makes horror horror
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
wrap up this idea of an episode about the horror genre, and then just discuss like horror is what it is because of
But
how
it
it
definitely
what
is
it
a
puts you through.
unique game. That's for
Um,
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah.
an interesting thought I just had that I didn't realize when we were talking about the creepypasta section. The thing that I was trying to put into words was creepypastas really take advantage of the uncanny valley.
Oh
There's that
yeah. Oh, in
space
a
where your
big way.
brain, yeah,
Yeah.
your brain isn't sure if it's an inhuman or human threat or what kind of threat value to associate. So it just gives you this like intense anxiety because you don't know. On
You
a
know,
very primal level, you don't know.
I can't
Um,
help it, but whenever I think about creepypastas, I just think of those old shitty posts where it's like, when you see it, you will shit bricks.
yeah, not all the shit bricks posts are scary though. It's
So
like
most
the
of them
one
are
with
just
like,
like, no, most of them are just like, there's nothing wrong with the picture, and it just says, when you see it, you will shit bricks.
And there's literally just
and
nothing
then you
there to
have like the
see.
Pikachu
Yeah.
one where everyone's like running in between Pikachu's legs, and you're like, oh, this is the
What the
Pikachu bounce
fuck?
house. It's a
Yeah.
giant bounce house
What?
Pikachu,
Oh, it's a
but the entrance
bounce
to the
house, and
bounce
the
house
entrance
is
is
right
between his
where the
legs. Okay.
genitalia would be, and it looks like a vagina
Oh my god! Wait,
because of the flap.
wait,
And
hold
so
on.
and so as a result, yeah. And
Wait,
then
hold on.
they just took that picture and said, "When you see it, you'll shit bricks." And it's like, no, I won't. I will just be very disappointed in humanity.
Pikachu bounce out. Oh god.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh no. Oh
terrible.
no.
That's horrible.
Thus we have
bad.
unleashed the last type of horror, the disappointment horror.
That's bad. Holy shit.
That's
The what the
terrible.
fuck humanity horror.
There's a Kotaku article titled "Please look inside Pikachu's ... vagina."
Oh my god.
Kotaku Australia. Oh shit! Well, this has been the tutorial. Yeah, if you learned anything, please let us know in the comments down
Could just
below.
watch the last 15 minutes of this, and it would be like a perfect encapsulation of what the tutorial is.
Yeah, it really is. I highly encourage you,
My name's Zeta for this.
if any of the games, if any of the
That we
games we talked about interest you, I would highly recommend go check them out because they're
Especially
generally
Dead by Daylight.
pretty
I
good.
really encourage you to play Dead by Daylight.
I really encourage you to
Please.
go play literally any of the other games we talked about.
Daylight is fun.
I don't know because
for a fun game.
I don't know because
It's not everyone's cup of tea.
yeah, because competitive multiplayer games are for scrubs and I don't do them.
Yeah, okay, get good, nerd.
All right, everybody say goodbye now.
I think you'd have fun with Dead by
You
Daylight
think?
if you could just
You
get
think?
a team.
I don't know.
If
Maybe.
you could get a team.
Well,
Yeah, if you had
we'll
a
see.
team
Maybe
that's,
one
like,
day.
Me and a couple of my friends could probably carry.
Me and a couple of the loser nerds that I hang out with.
Yes.
All right, everybody.
All right, everybody say
Bye.
goodbye now.
All right. Bye.
Bye.